This is your reminder that the BBC has yet to address the consistent transphobic leanings in its news coverage, and while the team behind Doctor Who is not connected to this in any way since this is a BBC-owned property, I'm going to keep pointing it out until the problem gets resolved. Links in a pinned comment below if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll stop saying it when it stops being a problem. Well, you don't always know where the TARDIS is going to drop you off. Hey folks, I considered just doing this as a short, but then again, this is ostensibly at least partially a Doctor Who channel. So the video that was gonna come out today is getting bumped again. This is actually the second week I've bumped it. I was already too far out from the video that inspired me to make it. It wasn't topical anymore anyways. It'll be out eventually, but let's talk about the answer to a question that folks outside of the UK, and particularly in the US, who are fans of Doctor Who have been asking for a while. Where can I see 2005 to 2022? Because it was on HBO Max, but that contract expired, and then it was nowhere. Disney never picked up that part of the catalog. It's actually kind of unclear as to whether or not it was ever an option. HBO, Warner Brothers, would have had to sell the remainder of its contract to them. Who knows if they were willing to do that, or if they were, what they would have asked, or if Disney ever inquired. They should have. I did an entire video about how not having that back catalog really hurt Doctor Who's chances of ever doing particularly well on Disney Plus. So you can check out that video for my thoughts on why I came to that conclusion. But since leaving HBO Max, it's just been kind of nowhere. I suppose it would have been possible if Disney hadn't decided to bail on the entire sponsoring and hosting of Doctor Who content altogether, that maybe once it was expired, they would have picked it up, but they were already jumping ship. So that obviously didn't happen. It's been in limbo for a little while, and now we have an answer. It's going to AMC Plus. And the reaction from fans has been, let's go with lukewarm. The most common reaction, at least that I saw, was, wait, what? And the general sense of confusion and or annoyance. And I am going to talk to that, but the reason this is going to be a full video as opposed to a short is because I don't want to just talk about the fact that it's showing up there on June 11th, but the fact that it's kind of interesting to examine how this impacts all of the invested parties. Because from my perspective, there are four of those. There are the fans of Doctor Who, the future of the show itself, the BBC, and AMC Plus. These are the four invested parties, and I think whether or not this is a good thing, that answer is different depending on which of those four you are talking about. So, since I brought up fan reaction, why don't we start there? As I said, I've not seen a lot of people react to this positively, and that is kind of understandable, at least from a strictly logistical standpoint. I have no doubt that most fans were hoping it would show up on a service they already had. Now, going by numbers and the most popular and most widely subscribed services that aren't Disney Plus, where it obviously wasn't going to end up, those would have been like Netflix or Amazon. I saw actually a lot of people float the idea that they wanted Doctor Who to end up on Amazon, and technically it could still, but that's an aspect that I'm going to come back to in a little bit. Hold on to that. So, since it's not showing up on one of the most widely subscribed to services, that means it's a lot less likely that fans are going, oh, cool, I already have that. Instead, now have to figure out the calculus. Is it worth it for me to sign up to something that I don't already have? Now, AMC Plus is not devoid of content. It's got a fair amount of stuff, even some stuff that is good or I've heard is very good. I don't have AMC Plus. I mean, I haven't even kept HBO Max since I got rid of it when they stopped carrying Doctor Who. I might end up subscribing to AMC Plus, but like, it's a different calculus for me. Like, I have the fact that I talk about Doctor Who a lot, and so I have the general concerns of, well, if I need to review something or check something or pull clips or rewatch an episode or whatever, yes, I have it on DVD and Blu-ray because I go out of my way to get this stuff in physical media because physical media freaking matters. But I could get it off that, but it's a big pain in the butt as opposed to just pulling the episode up on streaming. For me, when I pay the monthly fee for whatever AMC Plus costs, it would basically be me paying a convenience fee, which is useful for how often I end up having to reference Doctor Who related stuff. And also I get to then write it off on my taxes as a result. So, you know, it's a different calculus for me. But I'm sure for lots of people, AMC Plus now becomes the streaming service that you didn't carry before and now have to decide, are you going to carry it just because of Doctor Who? How many people will? I don't know. That's hard to judge. But that actually kind of brings us to one of the second parties involved in this. AMC Plus itself. I actually think for them, this is a great get. I mean, we have no idea how much they paid for this, but given that they are not getting the new stuff, that's connected to the stuff we're going to circle back to. So again, hold on to that. But given that they are just picking up the catalog of what I guess for the time being, I'll just call the revival era from the 2005 start of the show with Christopher Eccleston, right up through Power of the Doctor and the end of Jodie Whittaker's era, it's picking that up. And in some ways, this is actually kind of a coming home because the parent company of AMC Plus also now owns BBC America, which used to be where Doctor Who aired, you know, back before it wasn't really airing on TV here at all, and it just became all about streaming. So, I don't know, there's a little bit of a circular pattern there, a little bit of serendipity, I suppose. But the reason I say it's probably a good get for them is Doctor Who is a different kind of show for them, not completely out of their wheelhouse. Like Doctor Who can be, especially if you're selective about what episodes you talk about, you can certainly pitch it as a bit of a prestige show. And AMC Plus does seem to be going that direction. Like its big things that it advertises having is stuff like Mad Men and the Interview with the Vampire series, you know, pretty more high profile stuff. And stuff that is considered to have a certain kind of pedigree. And Doctor Who, you know, if you squint at it, can kind of fit that bill a little bit. The reason I think it's probably a pretty good deal for them is I doubt this was exceptionally expensive because, again, they're not getting new streaming rights. They're picking up a back catalog. So that is a heck of a lot cheaper than anybody looking at picking up future episodes, which, again, we will come back to. And because it is something that people care so much about, and it's such a big chunk of the catalog, they may well end up picking up, who knows how many, but I think probably a decent number of new subscribers at least willing to check it out for a month or two to see if there's enough other stuff on there to justify keeping it so they have Doctor Who and see what's there. I think it is just close enough to the sort of stuff AMC Plus might carry, but also is just different enough that it could bring an entirely new audience to them. Now, this is kind of the opposite of what I said about Doctor Who showing up at Disney. But again, keep in mind, when I said that Doctor Who wasn't a good fit on Disney, that had a lot to do with the fact that it did not also have the back catalog. Like the main thing that I pointed out in that video, if you didn't go back and check it, was that yes, Disney Plus was carrying the new episodes of Doctor Who, but if existing Disney subscribers found that went, oh, this is really neat, what are they then supposed to watch? They have to go to a completely other service to look at anything from before this. So that just dampened any ability of them to actually capitalize on the stuff that they were carrying. And whether or not fans of the show would sign up on Disney Plus, well, there's a lot of bleed over with major sci-fi franchises. And while I have no doubt there are some Doctor Who fans who weren't already subscribed to Disney Plus for, say, Star Wars, let's be honest, the Venn diagram of Star Wars and Doctor Who fans has a lot of crossover. And if people cared enough about Star Wars to be subscribed to Disney Plus, then they already had it. They weren't showing up for the first time because of Doctor Who. And I think on AMC Plus, it's going to work out better, partially because, again, it is a very significant catalog. And it's one that I think fans are more likely to follow, again, especially if the rates and cost is reasonable. I haven't checked that. It might just be too expensive to justify, but who knows? Here's the pricing plans. You make the call. But my point is, since there is no doubt that AMC Plus paid a heck of a lot less for this than Disney paid for their deal for Doctor Who, it was probably just overall a sounder investment. Now, is it a guaranteed win for them? No, of course not. But it might work out well, and it was probably a reasonable price for them to take a swing at it. So the other players involved, the BBC, which I mentioned, and their interest is, well, how much were they able to get for licensing that catalog? And obviously, I don't know the answer to that. I have absolutely no idea what AMC Plus paid for this. Whether or not this is a good move for the BBC is kind of dependent on the stuff that we're going to circle back to. So stick a pin in them, I suppose. Is this good for the show overall? It's hard to say. I mean, it is a good thing for the show to be streaming somewhere in the US. That is better than streaming nowhere. So it's an improvement on the situation that we had before. Is it actually good for the show, given that it is currently spread across 3 services, whatever one you use to watch Classic, which I think it's still on Tubi, but it's also on BritBox. So you have a couple of options for that, but you need one service to stream Classic. You'll need AMC Plus to stream the Revival era, and you'll need Disney Plus to see 14th Doctor specials and Ncuti Gatwa's episodes. That's 3 different services that this series is spread across. And while that is kind of defensible when you were talking about the jump from Classic to the Revival era, because crying out loud, there's a 16-year gap in there and a very noticeable difference in terms of visual quality, overall structure, etc. It's a little bit harder to justify asking people to have 2 different services to cover all this stuff from the Revival and then also the few years of stuff that we had from Disney. And then there's the question, who the heck carries the new stuff going forward? Because keep in mind, we've still got, at minimum, the holiday special that is coming out this year. Disney's not going to carry that. Disney still hasn't even released the War Between the Land and the Sea, last I checked. Who knows if they even will? I mean, I guess they probably will. They probably have contractual obligations to, but they clearly don't care anymore. So who the heck knows who's going to pick up that special and or any future episodes or seasons of Doctor Who? And that's the big open question that I had all those pins in and said we'd circle back onto. Because look, there's a handful of basic questions that I think come up just from this scenario. Those questions being, what episodes are included? As I said, 2005 through 2022, 9th Doctor through the entirety of the 13th Doctor. Is it going to include the upcoming Christmas special? No. Since this is the same parent company as BBC America, does that mean stuff might air on BBC America again? I mean, potentially, but since the deal didn't include any of the new stuff, that would just be reruns of the era that they've gotten the licensing for. And it might not even be that because of internal corporate structure. You get a weird thing where different divisions of the same parent company actually have to make deals and license between each other. It doesn't work as smoothly as you'd think it would. It becomes weird. And then the big question, okay, so where will the new stuff go up? That's pretty unanswered right now. But I am going to do something I don't do too often, which is offer a little bit of speculation. Not definitive. I'm not going to say this is probably what's going to happen, but let's look at some possibilities. Is it possible AMC Plus could actually carry the Christmas special and future episodes? Yeah, it is possible. It's very clear at this point that the license agreement for this era of Doctor Who, what I'm calling the Revival era, is a separate license from airing new stuff. That doesn't mean that the same place can't get both. It just means those are separate deals. So AMC would have to make a new separate deal to carry that special and or any future episodes. But I don't think they will. I actually don't think anybody in the US is going to. Here's why. The future of the show is too uncertain. Because if you license for the future Christmas special, that might be all you get. Because if the idea is, okay, we'll license that in future seasons, well, future seasons haven't been announced. It's really unclear when they will happen, which is going to put any potential partners with the BBC in one of two positions. Either they're going to have to commit the same kind of money that Disney committed, i.e. enough money into the entire process to guarantee that future seasons do get made. Except I can't imagine anyone's going to be really willing to do that, given that it didn't work out especially well for Disney. Now, again, there are arguments you can make about why it didn't work for Disney and it might work for somebody else. But just the flat out simple truth is, on paper, the last folks who took that deal weren't very happy with it. And that just makes it innately unappealing. And so if there is no promise of future seasons, or if the only way to guarantee future seasons past the special is to dump in way more money than just getting the license to broadcast or stream it, that's just not going to look appealing to anybody. I mean, there are some companies that could afford it, certainly. Amazon, Netflix, they could afford it, but why? Like, at this point, as I said, they'd be looking at a back catalog already spread across 3 other services, and they're now going to become the 4th service that is broadcasting brand new stuff that they have none of the backfill on. That's not something that's going to be appealing to really anybody, except maybe AMC Plus. Like, I can envision, I doubt it, but I can envision a world in which they get the license to be able to stream, say, the Christmas special, with maybe an option in there to get first look rights at a future season if and when it happens. I could see something like that being possible. I'm certainly not going to count on it, though. But as far as future of Doctor Who streaming in America, it is great to have this back. No doubt. Like, it's just a relief. The fact that this stuff can be just taken away because you just don't happen to have the services on, and you had one that it was on, but now it's just gone off that and it's nowhere, and your options become varying forms of piracy and or use of VPNs and cheating around the system when maybe you don't even really want to do that, but what other choice have you gotten? Yeah, the entire thing is frustrating. But for me, I can't get worked up in a negative way about the idea that it's on AMC Plus because, again, unless it was bundled with a plan to also produce future episodes, I just don't think it would have been particularly appealing to something like Netflix or Amazon. They are increasingly caring a lot less about holding on to stuff that they themselves didn't make and have the sole distribution on. Like, heck, even so-called Netflix originals like She-Ra and the Princesses of Power isn't on Netflix anymore because it was technically licensed from DreamWorks, even though Netflix was where it first premiered and was the only place it ever aired. Now, that might show up somewhere else eventually, but they're not even putting in the money to re-up contracts to hold on to the stuff that was made for them. So, with the exception of like a handful of like super shows that always do well on streaming, like Friends, but like there's a handful of things with back catalogs that continue to do really well. But other than that, most of these streaming services have signaled that we don't really want this stuff. Not the big ones, at any rate. You can get your smaller niche ones who are more willing to fill out the back catalog with this because streaming has just gone ahead and recreated cable. Because it used to be the case for cable that a lot of really schlocky, sort of trashy and or old stuff would show up on weird niche channels. Think back to the Sci-Fi Channel. That was initially just a whole ton of reruns of old sci-fi shows and really cheap, schlocky sci-fi and horror movies because it's what was cheap and you could literally build an entire channel based around that theme because that stuff was really cheap. It's only when they get bigger and start trying to produce their own stuff that it kind of gets weird and wonky. But yeah, like I said, we've kind of recreated cable, which was always going to happen as more and more of these streaming services cropped up. I mean, I say we recreated cable. We didn't do this. They did this to us. But it is I don't know. It's comforting to me that the show showed up anywhere. And I think the reason fans are disappointed is because I think they had unreasonable expectations. The impression I get looking at the reactions from disappointed fans is that they thought one of the bigger streamers would pick it up and would maybe also commit to the future seasons. But I just don't think that was ever going to happen. And the fact that the BBC is licensing out the back catalog, or at least this chunk of it, completely separately from future seasons, to me says they don't know about the future of this either. Like, on the one hand, this did already exist as a separate license. Obviously, HBO Max was carrying it despite the fact that Disney was going to be airing the new stuff. So clearly they'd already broken this stuff up as far as being able to license certain parts and then sell other parts separately. So they'd already kind of created that as a situation, but like they could try and recombine this stuff, basically skipping the Disney era more or less. I don't mean like declaring it non-canon, but in terms of like putting stuff available on a single service, I think most people could live with missing a couple of years worth of stuff and have it still largely feel like the same show with just a little bit of a gap that you're missing. But the fact that they either weren't interested in finding someone who would partner with them on both, or couldn't and opted to just license this chunk because that's what they could find a buyer for, it doesn't speak particularly great for the future of the show. Now, I think I've said some places, I don't know if I've said it on camera recently, I would not be shocked if Doctor Who goes on another hiatus. I would not be very surprised if the main purpose of this special is to basically tie off the era and leave it in a position that is more acceptable to be picked up at a significantly later date. Because some people have noted maybe it would have been better for the final episode of Gatwa's era, that being the reality war, rather than ending with him regenerating into Billy Piper, that instead we see the start of the regeneration but don't see who he regenerates into, so that you can sort that out later rather than having to crunch to figure out how to do this, in the time that they've had to make the Christmas special. And that is an argument to be made, but the thing is, I would not be shocked if part of the reason they threw Billy Piper in there was to get enough people demanding to know what happens next to get the Christmas special made. But I don't think that trick's going to work twice. And the thing is, if it had been a more open-ended regeneration, I think it's very possible we'd already be in a hiatus and we wouldn't be getting the holiday special. And maybe that would be healthier for the show. It's hard to say. At this point, I don't think a break overall or a hiatus is a bad idea for the show. I think trying to crank it out at the pace that they have didn't work. And maybe it is time for a break. Maybe rather than scrambling to find another showrunner or another doctor, you let it rest for a while. Let potential showrunners have the time to pitch something that is a different way to do it, or their own spin on it, and not have to rush to try and find somebody. And yeah, maybe hiatuses last a while. As I said, it was 16 years last time. But sometimes it's okay for stuff to go away for a little bit. And I say that as a fan of this show who wants there to be more. I always like when there's more Doctor Who. But sometimes you gotta let the tired thing rest and catch its breath. We'll see, though. At least it's somewhere again. About freaking time. Doctor Who, the revival era on AMC Plus. What are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, gets you early access to most videos. You didn't have early access on this one for long because I did a really quick turnaround on it. But you also get to see my docket at the start of every month of what I'm planning to do. I have polls every now and again for things like which classic Doctor Who episode I might put forward. And I am beginning to experiment with some Patreon exclusive content. So consider supporting me there to check any of that out. But don't worry too much about it. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You're the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lutfula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Snark Shark, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Twylord, Tracy Scrabbit, Paul Barabajoggle, Magdalena, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. Additionally, to thank some folks from the lower tiers of support: Lee and Andy, Gavin Hinden, and I Am Orcus. We have some new friends. We have Peppercorn and where'd the other one go? Where'd you go? Coriander has gone behind my head. They are very young and they haven't been integrated with the other rats yet, but soon. Okay, yes. Maybe you weren't quite camera ready.